So there's a problem with Sonlight. And when I started experiencing this problem with my boys, I actually remembered, oh, we used to have this same problem with Sonlight way back when I was a kid. Hi, I'm Rachel from 7 in All. I'm a second-generation homeschooler of 2 sons, and this is going to be my November homeschool recap and review. I'll share a little bit about how the month went, I'll highlight just a few favorite resources, and I'll end by talking about some reflections and lessons. So overall, we are still going strong with all of the curriculum that I started out with. We've now finished 2 months of school since coming back from our big trip, which is kind of hard to believe. Time really flies, doesn't it? And we've actually added in a few new things toward the end of this month, which I will tell you about later on in the video. It's a little bit crazy, maybe adding on some new things in the second month of homeschool, but actually I feel like that can be kind of a good time of the year. Don't start out with necessarily everything, but see how it goes and then maybe add in something extra if you feel it's needed. We'll get to that. First, I want to share a few favorite resources we've been using. Number 1, the star of the month, is the old classic pattern blocks. Pattern blocks are just a fantastic resource, guys. We are using Kate Snow's Kindergarten Math with Confidence this year for my oldest son, and during this month we were focusing a lot on shapes and patterns, and we got to use pattern blocks a lot. And he just loved it. Granted, I should be honest that any math lesson that includes pattern blocks will probably take an extra long time because there has to be several detours with using pattern blocks to make fun pictures, but you know, nothing wrong with that. We're not in a rush at all. So I'm like, this was one page that was just so especially heartwarming. He had to use pattern blocks to fill in this fish, and this is a pretty big shape, so it took him a little bit of working on it, figuring it out, and just his smile of pride when he figured out that pattern was so heartwarming to me. Proud little mama, seeing my baby getting his schoolwork activity and having so much fun. So pattern blocks, you got little kids learning math, they are a great resource. 2 of our books I want to highlight from this month are the old classic Choo Choo, which is by Virginia Lee Burton. She is an excellent author, especially if you have children who really like machinery and vehicles. Choo Choo was scheduled in our Gentle and Classical Primer, and it's actually a great story to tie into the theme of talking about self-control and decision-making, which was one of the themes in Gentle and Classical this month. But it was also a great story. My boys asked to read it and reread it again and again. It had trains. Trains are a big hit in our family. Then also, what can you do with a rebozo? Or qué puedes hacer con un rebozo? This is a bilingual storybook, so there's text completely in English and completely in Spanish. This was scheduled in our Beautiful Mundo Spanish curriculum, but it's an excellent read. It's about all the things that you can do with this scarf, this rebozo, or shawl. I think shawl would be a better name for it. And I actually got out a big shawl that I have, and we acted out every different page of different ways to wear it, different ways to play with it. My son's favorite page, see they're using it to cover the eyes as a blindfold when doing a piñata. My son's favorite page was this one, where the girl's using it as a cape, and he loved to wear the rebozo as a cape and run around. She also dances with the shawl to the song La Bamba. So I played La Bamba and we danced around really silly and crazy with my shawl. And so it was just fun. And then even at bedtime, one of the nights after we did that, my son asks me, can you play the song that we danced to with the rebozo? I'm like, okay. So we listened to La Bamba as a bedtime song. But that was a book that really captured our hearts. I do recommend it. Now, one resource that we finished up using this month was Gentle and Classical Nature Volume 1. So I'm saying goodbye to these beautiful, beautiful memory statement cards and flashcards and all the fun that we had using that. We started it very close to the beginning of 2022, and we just finished up after, of course, our long break for a long summer break, and I do definitely feel it's one of those curriculums you feel a little bit like, oh man, it's over. We finished it up, but it's okay. We jumped right into Nature Volume 2. So the last week of November was our very first week of Nature Volume 2, studying oceans and shorelines and ocean animals. My son is super excited about it, already loving it. I think that one will end up being more of a favorite for us than Nature Volume 1 was, just because this is more focused on temperate climates, and we live in a tropical climate. We live 5 minutes from the ocean, so I think we're going to really connect with that one even more. But I highly recommend Gentle and Classical Nature, and I'll leave a link for them. I have a referral link for them that gets you like maybe $5 off or something. If you haven't purchased it, if you want to look into it for an early nature science program, I do highly recommend it. And I have a whole video about how I used this Nature 1 program on my channel that I can link as well. As for new resources that we have added in close to the end of the month, my son started pulling this workbook off the shelf. I have a little shelf where I have workbooks or resources that I'm planning to use in the future, and asking to do it. I'd actually kind of planned that maybe this would be a workbook we'd implement in kindergarten, but he's been really wanting to do it. This is from the Gran Quaderno Montessori series by LaRousse Publishers. I've had a few of these. I had an alphabet one and a math one. The math one was pretty good. I wasn't too impressed with the alphabet one. It's just little weird. Some of the activities were kind of weird, not my idea. I'm kind of picky about alphabet activities. But this one is science related, and it's basically all basic life science. Now there's a lot of cutting and pasting, and to my son, cutting and pasting is the most fun type of activity in the world. So this is not part of our scheduled schoolwork. He already has science through his Gentle and Classical Nature, but this is something that he loves to get out in the middle of the quiet afternoon for something fun to do, and I'll do a couple pages with him. We've done quite a bit of it already. So it's got plants, it's got animal science, it's got, I think, a little bit about space. It has some geography in it towards the back of the book, which he wants to skip around, but I'm trying to be like, let's not do the geography ones yet. I think some of that will go over his head, but the life science stuff, like here with the frog, we've got different parts of a frog's body matching it, kind of like a puzzle. It's in Spanish, so if you're looking for Spanish science resources, that's fun. And we have also very newly started the Llamitas Spanish. I went really back and forth for a long time, like, should I buy it? Should I not buy it? I've been noticing that my son seems to be really learning a lot very, very quickly. And his English is definitely outpacing his Spanish. His comprehension in English is outpacing his Spanish, and I'm okay with that. I don't think that my goal is not necessarily equal bilingualism for my kids. I know that that is some families' goal. Just for me, I'm more interested, I want them to have a connection with Spanish. I want them to have a basis in Spanish, but I don't feel like they need to be equally across the board educated in Spanish and English. If we lived in a Spanish-speaking country, if they were most likely planning to live and work in a Spanish-speaking country, we would have to adjust our goals. But right now, that's not our family situation. So I do want them to be able to continue growing in their Spanish, though. So I felt like he's doing so much in English, I did want to add something else in Spanish to keep encouraging him, getting him closer to being able to read in Spanish, have a foundation for reading and basic academics in Spanish. So I did pick up the digital version of Llamitas Spanish program. I can link them down below. We're very new to it, so I don't want to say too much about it yet. I will try to come in and do a review at some point and I tell you what to expect from this type of program. But he's definitely enjoying it. We've gotten through more lessons than I expected to in a relatively short period of time. But that's a new thing that we've added, and I do think and I hope that it's going to just help push Spanish a little bit more during our homeschool day. And lastly, I want to talk about the problem that I've discovered with Sonlight. If you've been watching my channel, you know that I'm doing Sonlight Preschool and Sonlight Pre-K with my boys for their first thing in the morning time. We read the books over breakfast. And the problem that I've discovered is what I like to call the read another chapter problem. because when I started experiencing this problem, it was so familiar. And it was familiar because when I was homeschooled and my mom used Sonlight when I was growing up, we would very regularly, probably almost every day, as soon as she finished the read aloud, me and all my siblings would start chanting, "Read another chapter, read another chapter." And in a vain hope that maybe today she would listen to us and read more chapters, because we didn't want her to stop reading. We wanted her to keep reading more. And that is actually the thing that you should know about Sonlight. Yes, you know, when you get a Sonlight package, when you're reading through the Sonlight book list, it's a pretty hefty list of books. It's a pretty good chunk of books you read through during the year. But sometimes what's not apparent is that you really only read a very small amount of those books on a daily basis. Now, as you get into higher grades, you read through a little bit more, but you're still only reading small amounts of a book each and every day. Maybe you're reading a chapter, and as you grow, it's a little bit longer, but you read through parts of a book over several weeks. So we are having a little bit of that problem right now, not chapters, because we're not reading chapter books, but my sons are consistently asking and wanting to read more. So with our Bible story book, we're scheduled to read about 3 Bible stories most weeks. And the first day of the week, he'll want to read through all 3 Bible stories. As soon as I finish one, he'll be like, "Okay, can we read the next one, Mommy?" I'm like, "Okay, fine. Finish that one. Can we read the next one, Mommy?" Wants to find out what happens next. So we're reading often multiple Bible stories every time we get the Bible out. Then this book is another one that they find it really hard to read just one of the stories in it. So it's got a story about sailing on a ship, or it's got a story about being a police officer, or a fireman coming to the rescue, and just one is apparently not very satisfying. But it's not only the Bible and the storybooks, even the science book, they are not super satisfied with only 2 pages some days. Even the Mother Goose book, a lot of times you'll be scheduled to read 1 page, and then the next day you read the next page. But they'll be like, "Well, what about that one, Mommy? What about that one?" I do try to draw the line. You got to draw the line somewhere. We can't just read these entire books, you know, in a day. We got to spread them out. So I am glad that I'm experiencing this. I am glad that Sonlight is not the only resource that I'm using. I'm glad we have Beautiful Mundo for our Spanish literature. I'm glad we have Gentle and Classical, Primer, and Nature for more reading in our week, because I am noticing that if I was just doing the Sonlight pre-K, I think we would be running out of our story time fairly early in the week. And of course, you could just go ahead and like move on to the next week, you know, if you're going through. For me, because of the age of my boys, because they are fairly small, even though they love books, I don't necessarily want to rush them on. Towards the end of Sonlight pre-K, we start reading some short chapter books. I do want my boys to have a few weeks, a few months to get older before we get toward that section, because I do think that, you know, getting a little bit more time is going to help them appreciate those. So I am finding my way to balance being willing to let their curiosity lead them and being willing to read a little more, but also, okay, once we finish the week, that's all the Sonlight we get for this week, because they are little. Now, the amount of reading in Sonlight does increase from level to level, but I'm very glad that I'm using Sonlight pre-K. I would not want to be using Sonlight K with my 4-year-old right now, because the content would not be at his level. The content in Sonlight pre-K is perfect for his level. The problem is he just, you know, the books are so tempting that once you read a little bit, then he wants more and you want more. I think the level is perfect, but realizing that, you know, sometimes they want more, and I'm not always, of course, reading to them as much as they want me to within a single book. It's good to leave them hanging at times, but you know, it's a kind of a, you play it by ear, you play it by feel. I'm okay to, you know, read maybe 3 Bible stories in a row one morning, but we're gonna say, okay, that's enough, because we're gonna read some other stories right now. And kind of leave them hanging, that to know we will come back to this book. You know we will come back to this book. We've been reading this book for weeks. You know this is not the end. We will have more chances. But I can relate to it. I can relate to that read another chapter problem. So I'm sympathetic to it, but every day I'm finding it when to read that other chapter and when to say, okay, we're done with this book. Let's move on to the next one. So our November was a fun month full of great read alouds, fun with math and shapes and pattern blocks, and my son learning little by little, sounding out these CBC words with learning to read. I so enjoy my days with my sons. They are truly a gift. And I would love to hear, how did your November go? Did you have a great Thanksgiving? If you celebrate Thanksgiving, this was my first Thanksgiving without my mom around to, help be the mom of cooking Thanksgiving dinner, and I kind of had to lead it by myself, so that's a new experience. Figuring out that, which, still modified, simple Thanksgiving, because you can't get a turkey here. At least you cannot get a turkey here on our budget. But we had a beautiful November, and I'm so looking forward to December and adding in some Christmas read alouds and just having another beautiful month of homeschool. All right, guys, I'll be seeing you. Bye.